the marquee. This week, the name on the marquee has got to be Larissa Pacheco, who this past weekend in New York City at Madison Square Garden defeated Kayla Harrison by unanimous decision. The scorecards read 48-47 across the board. All three judges saw it the same way. Mark, let me toss it over to you first. What was your reaction of Pacheco getting it done and handing Kayla Harrison her first professional loss?
Larissa Pacheco fucking did it. What an upset. I freaking went on and on this show about how good she was and how she shouldn't be overlooked and all this, and I should have just freaking pulled the damn trigger, and I could have looked pretty smart right now, but that was hard to do, fighting Kayla Harrison. But, yeah, props to Pacheco, man. She spent a large portion of that fight on the mat, and she won a lot of the time that she was down there. She just stayed active. She was active with her jiu-jitsu. She threatened with it whenever she could to create some space. She was cracking Kayla with shots from bottom every chance she got. Any time that Kayla moved in a way that left her head exposed, she was just eating shots and had to kind of dive back and get her head buried again. And Larissa never settled down there. Like, she was always working to find a way to get back up, even as the fight went long and they were getting a little tired. And I expected maybe that was going to wane a bit and Kayla would start being able to hold her down. It never did. Larissa Pacheco battled for all 25 minutes. If anyone got tired, I think it was Kayla. She was the one who was looking like she was kind of trying to tap into something more, and she couldn't get it out of herself.
Yeah.
And, give Kayla credit. She went for it as much as she was able. She even got a takedown in the fifth. And, if she could have been a little more active on top, those cards might have gone her way. So it's not like she got handled in the fight. She was in the fight. But she had a hard time with Larissa. She was not safe on the feet, and the strides that Pacheco made in her ground game really gave Kayla a lot of problems. And I scored it the same way the judges did. I gave Kayla rounds 1 and 3, and I gave Pacheco 2, 4, 5. And I didn't know how it was going to go when the cards were getting read. Part of me was like, they're going to give this thing to Kayla, but I was really happy to see that it went Pacheco's way as I thought it should have. And what a huge moment for her career. Just quickly. This is a girl who started her career 10-0 with 10 finishes, came to the UFC with a lot of hype, got her shot against Jessica Andrade at 135 pounds is what she used to cut to at that time, gets choked out by a guillotine, gets another shot. It's Germaine de Randamie. De Randamie puts her out with strikes, and she's out of the UFC. 2 fights in, 2 fights out. She picks up 1 win, ends up in the PFL. Kayla beats her 5 straight rounds. So it's like, for her, and for most, it was like kind of like, maybe Pacheco's not going to be much in this sport. And not to her, man. She packed on size. She got even more dangerous. She worked on her overall game, rattled off 7 out of 8 wins, and now just caps it off with $1 million and a win over Kayla Harrison. So, hell of a night for Larissa Pacheco, and a tough pill to swallow for Kayla, of course. I'm sure she thinks that was not the best performance that she could give. I don't think it looked like it was. But, hey, these things happen in MMA. It was not her night. You'd hope maybe it's something that's going to make her better as well going forward, and we'll see what happens next.
Oh, Kayla Harrison, the 2-time Olympic gold medalist in judo, was seeking her 3rd PFL championship, headlining the card. And she faced Pacheco 2 previous times, besting her both times. What was your reaction to Pacheco, I guess, sort of getting the monkey off her back, getting over that hump and getting it done, defeating the Goliath of Kayla Harrison?
I think for me, when we were watching Ronda Rousey and her run, the one thing that was, in my opinion, very obvious was her game was to get you down to the ground, get a flip out of you or whatever, and then attempt some kind of submission. Kayla Harrison's game is slightly different, but the objective, I think, is relatively the same, where she wants to get her hands on you, perform some kind of takedown, and then work her way to a submission. The problem with those games is that if you can stop one of those advances, then a lot of other things tend to get exposed. So for Ronda Rousey, when she was fighting Holly Holm, and she couldn't even grab onto Holly Holm, let alone take her down, Holly Holm was piecing that girl up. and it exposed a lot of her striking flaws and, you know, the infamous head movement and yada, yada, yada. Kayla Harrison at this point I thought was fairly similar because she didn't look as good as she normally did, she normally does, although this wasn't a complete trouncing as the Ronda Rousey one was. It's very different. But Kayla Harrison got stuffed many times. She got a couple of takedowns in there, especially in the first round. She hit a nice otogari. I think, what is it, otogari? Osotogari?
Osotogari.
Osotogari. And it was beautiful. She got down on the ground, was able to control. But Pacheco, like Mark was saying, was fighting back, was threatening from the bottom, attacking from the bottom with heavy hands. I think the real thing, though, was when Pacheco was able to spend the majority of the rest of that fight fighting off Kayla Harrison's advances, it burned out Kayla Harrison, I think, but it also changed the momentum of the fight as well, because you saw Kayla Harrison stepping back, moving back, and Pacheco just stomping forward and stalking her for a good majority of that fight. I was really impressed with Pacheco. I don't know. This is, again, one of those performances where I don't know if it was Larissa Pacheco flipping a switch and finding a way to finally make that matchup make sense, or if it was something that Kayla Harrison was missing that night. Either way, Kayla Harrison looked really defeated by the end of that, because I think she knows she lost that fight. I don't think this is one of those, personally, I don't think this is one of those fights that was difficult to see who won that fight. As tough as the fight was, I thought it was very clear who won that fight. Personally, I had Kayla Harrison losing 4-1. I gave that, that third round? The third round to Pacheco as well. It was a close round, but I thought Pacheco did enough to be on top, and she was just more aggressive. I think there are arguments to be made for that. But either way, even if you give it the 3 rounds, I also thought that it was still very clear that she won that fight. So I give credit to Pacheco, man. She really gutted that fight out. She really fought to win against somebody who's beaten her twice, which I think, as we've seen recently, is sometimes a very big mental hump to overcome. So credit to her. And Kayla Harrison will be back. That woman is absolutely talented, physically phenomenal. There's no reason to think that she goes down from here. You know, it's a moment that she's got to take in. I'm sure it's not the first time she's ever lost something in her life, but it's going to sting, and I hope it motivates her and it doesn't defeat her.
Guys, do you feel like, I mean, the parallel is there, you know, the last time there was an American real juggernaut in women's MMA was Ronda Rousey, who was also an Olympic medalist in judo. Something about this judo background, lightning has struck twice. Now, when Ronda lost to Holly Holm, it kind of just like shattered the aura of Ronda Rousey. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it for her journey, but there you have it. Now Kayla Harrison has suffered her first loss, tasted defeat for the first time as a professional. Do you think it's going to be a similar kind of a deal as Ronda, where other girls are going to be less intimidated by her? They're going to say, well, the aura is kind of gone, or the blueprint is out of how to beat her, or do you think she's going to bounce back from this better than what happened with Rousey?
I'm sure that is a little bit of a factor. You know, I doubt it's 0. I'm sure girls are like, wow, look at Kayla Harrison, she's beatable. I bet I could do that too, so on and so on. That's just the nature of the sport. But I don't think the similarities are too much. I think Ronda really had this aura of invincibility that was shattered not only by a loss, but by a knockout where she looked bad. And I also don't think Ronda was necessarily like a grinder. Like, she was very much about the quick win. Kayla, sure, she had an aura of invincibility too, but it wasn't near the same as Ronda's, near the same buzz, hype, anything. She lost, but it's a close fight. It's a decision. It's not any knockout like that. And she grinds. Like, she's not someone who needs that, like, if I don't beat you in the first 2 minutes,
right,
you're going to get confident because you're like, wow, you're surviving. Like, she can beat you for 25 minutes if she has to. So I don't think it's quite the same type of thing. And I think she can make some small adjustments and win that fight. So I don't think it's on the same level necessarily, and I do expect Kayla to bounce back. Yeah. Not saying that she's ever going to like beat Cyborg or Amanda, which we were never sure of, and we don't know if she'll ever even fight those people. Yeah. But bounce back to possibly beat Pacheco, yeah, I could certainly see it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So in terms of where these ladies go from here, for now, we know the answer is that the season's over. That's how PFL is structured, which is super cool.
Yeah.
In terms
I'm
of
curious, if we have to go through a whole nother season again, or if there are times like this one where the PFL will be like, all right, it's a big fight, let's just do number 4. Like, I'm curious to see how they decide to handle this. And I already saw today they're trying to still set up Kayla and Cyborg, so who knows?
Oh,
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
were you gonna say, Omar?
No, I was surprised they were trying to set up Kayla and Cyborg. I figured Pacheco would be the good fight to go down again. I mean, I know it's repetitive, but it's still very interesting because Kayla Harrison kind of got her both times, and now all of a sudden Pacheco seems to have found a way, and it's almost like, could she do it again? And PFL, unfortunately, especially when it comes to those heavier divisions, don't really have a ton of talent to really dip into the pool for that makes some of these fights really worthwhile. That's kind of been one of the biggest knocks on Kayla Harrison's career so far, is that she's fighting girls that are essentially unknown, girls that may not have the resume to necessarily put all these accolades next to your name about, all these quick finishes and et cetera, et cetera. But I think Larissa Pacheco has now proven that she's made a name for herself, that she's the real deal. So it's difficult to deny wanting to see 2 girls of that caliber go at it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Women of that caliber.
Sure. Ladies.
So I'm looking at it right now. Apparently let's see, who is this guy? Don Davis. I don't know who he is. He's something, I guess, in charge of PFL. But he has offered $1 million to each of Kayla and Cyborg, plus another $2 million to the winner of the fight, plus the winner chooses a Rolls Royce. So basically, you win this fight, you get $3 million in a Rolls Royce.
And a Rolls Royce.
What?
Biggest cash purse in history for female MMA. This was yesterday.
Wow.
And Cyborg responded and said she drives a Tesla and that she wants an 80-20 split. So it doesn't seem like we're close.
Okay. I
feel that.
Then sell the Rolls Royce.
I'm over the gas cars myself. I'd be like, give me something electric now. Just get out of here with that Rolls Royce.
Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah, right? Give it to me.
Jeez, man.
Wait, Cyborg wants an 80-20 split with Kayla?
Yeah, apparently. That's what.
Oh, that fight's never gonna happen.
No, certainly not at that.
That fight's never gonna happen.
60-40 maybe happens.
Maybe she's just trying to anchor. Okay. Mark, the event also featured 5 other finals matchups within the PFL's various division tournaments, with the winner of each taking home $1 million. So give us a synopsis overview of how the rest of this night played out.
All right, so yeah, we'll work our way down the card here. Omar got to shine last week. This one's going to be the Mark show for a second here.
I wasn't.
So co-main, the fight I was most looking forward to, Brendan Loughnane wins the featherweight tournament with a 4th round TKO of Bubba Jenkins. And what a damn fight this thing was. It lived up to the hype that I had built in my head for it. They were jawing at each other throughout, kept the intensity high. In round 1, Bubba came out and did his thing. He was looking good. He was landing more. He didn't get a takedown, but he had Brendan thinking and working to defend. But Loughnane just kept investing in that calf kick and investing in that calf kick. And before you know it, we're mid-round 2, and Bubba Jenkins is badly compromised. And he was an absolute G as he kept fighting, kept finding clean shots that he was landing, just enough to make you think, like, man, maybe he's not out of this. But the variety of strikes coming from Brendan Loughnane was just too great. I mean, especially as Jenkins started having a harder time moving defensively. Like, it was teeps up the middle, calf kicks, body shots, punches from all different angles, and all of it with a high pace and a high work rate coming from Loughnane. He threw and landed double the amount of strikes that Jenkins did. So that's a lot coming at you when your leg is already compromised. And the key to the whole thing was that Bubba Jenkins couldn't land a takedown either. So Chris Wade and Bubba Jenkins, 2 top-shelf wrestlers, back-to-back fights, not a smidge of a takedown for either man on Brendan Loughnane. So that is a massive progression in his game and something that really elevates him to being a pretty high-level fighter at this point if you're not going to be able to bring him to the mat. So huge showing for him. Great night. And I just want to add real quick, I hate the bias of other organizations as opposed to the UFC. And even fighters have it, and I saw it after this fight. Charles Rosa is tweeting, like, how do you think this no-name PFL champ does against a UFC-level fighter? I'm clearly better than him, and he's making 10 times more than me, and blah, blah, blah. And Brendan Loughnane would beat the fucking brakes off Charles Rosa. Like, I hate these guys who just think because they're in the UFC, they're, like, better than everyone else in the world. Brendan Loughnane would smoke Charles Rosa. Anyway, that was a quick sidebar by me.
Real quick, I do also want to point out that Loughnane won his fight in the Contender Series. Mark mentioned this last week. He won his fight in the Contender Series, was shafted a spot in the UFC because he went for a takedown at the end of the fight. And Dana White got all in his butthurt feelings and made a whole fucking speech about this isn't what we do and I'm here to see what you have today and show me everything you got and brain damage now and all this other shit. And so it was lovely to see Loughnane essentially give a real fuck you to the UFC by winning $1 million, not even a year after that. I think it's fantastic.
Connor was tweeting about him too. Connor was saying how good he looked and how he should be in the UFC and Dana needs to sign him and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, big performance for Brendan Loughnane.
Yeah, man.
Charles Rosa especially needs to realize that the only reason he's not in the UFC was because Dana White was on a fucking roid rampage that day or something. He was on something that day. But the fact is,
Charles Rosa is about this close from being cut from the UFC. So
he's got one foot out the door as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, moving on down the card, we will go to the lightweight championship, which was Olivier Aubin-Mercier against Stevie Ray, and OAM gets the round 2 knockout. This was a hell of a statement from the man OAM. Round 1, he came out and he won it with rain striking, kind of just exactly how we said he would. And I'm thinking, like, all right, we were right. He's going to kind of handle Stevie Ray here. And then in round 2, Stevie Ray finds this big lift takedown, immediately takes the back. He's got OAM defending for a while. And for a second, even though OAM does eventually get back to his feet, it was like, wow, like, is Stevie Ray going to find a way to ugly this thing up and make it interesting? And we were doubting him again, and then bang. As soon as the thought entered my mind, check right hook of fucking doom. Stevie Ray goes out bad, no follow-up shot necessary, and OAM gets his first PFL finish at the absolute perfect time. So
yeah.
Huge statement by him, huge performance by him, and honestly, another guy that the UFC never should have let go, especially with the way they look to market themselves in Canada. It'd be nice to have an OAM still on the roster. I'm not sure how he ended up leaving. Maybe it was his choice. I don't remember, to be honest, but obviously in a good spot in the game right now.
Real quick, what were the odds of OAM winning by knockout? Because they had to be in the 1,000 plus.
I bet it was fairly high. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, they don't really split up knockout and TKO. They're one bet.
Sure.
So, like, it could have been a ground and pound, so maybe it was a little more down. But it was good odds regardless, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right, so one more that I'll kind of give a walkthrough, and then I'll give you some quicker recaps. The one other that I want to touch on kind of significantly is at light heavyweight, which was where we saw Rob Wilkinson take out Omari Akhmedov via round 2 TKO by doctor stoppage. This was a crazy fight. Rob Wilkinson came out looking friggin' elite in round 1. The reach was a huge factor. But on top of that, he was stuffing takedowns with ease, landing the right hand over and over, walking Akhmedov down. He mixes in like a jump knee by the end of the round. It was just a show from him out of the gate. But you can't talk about this fight without noting that Omari Akhmedov is an absolute tank of a human. Like, it was incredible how much damage this man was taking, and he just kept coming and kept coming. And you started to get this feeling of like, holy shit, is this going to be one of those fights where Rob Wilkinson wins it every second, and then he gets so tired from beating the shit out of Akhmedov that it's going to swing? And kind of just at the end of round 2, when Wilkinson did start to look tired, thankfully for him, he had put enough of a beating on Akhmedov by that point, created a cut big enough on his head that the doctors were just like, okay, no mas. So massive win for Wilkinson. You got to give him his credit. The guy threw 150 strikes in 2 rounds, and he landed 100 of them. That is a hell of a clip at light heavyweight. So
yeah,
he just had one of the best PFL runs of anyone I can recall. 4 knockouts, I'm pretty positive. So I'm very intrigued to see what his next career step will be. And this is a guy who was a wrestler. Back when he fought Izzy in the UFC, he was known as a straight-up wrestler. There was no hands to speak of. Now he's friggin' cracking fools. So he's an interesting guy right now, and I'm sure he could make middleweight too if that ever needed to be the case. A lot of times at the heavier weight classes in PFL, it kind of seems like guys decide not to cut. Like Akhmedov obviously used to be a middleweight in the UFC as well. So I think he could still make 185. So he's an interesting fighter right now. I'm curious to see if he stays in the PFL or not. And it's interesting because so many of these guys that win, Wilkinson said it, OAM said it, Loughnane might have even said it too. I'm trying to think. I think all 3 of those guys might have said it. They talk about how it's the hardest thing they ever did. Like you could tell they mean it. They're like, this many fights, this short of time, you're going into fights injured, there's nothing you can do about it. Like, it's painful. And they were all making the point that it's the hardest thing they ever did. So it makes you wonder, like, yeah, you got $1 million at the end, but like, do you want to go through this again, or would you rather kind of try to hit up some other organizations and see what's out there for you? So I'm curious to see what guys do. But okay, let's get through the rest of this card quick. I'll give you some quicker rundowns on the rest. Heavyweight, Ante Delija, round 1 TKO of Matheus Scheffel. Scheffel actually came out and maybe surprised some people by being unafraid to stand and exchange with Delija. And for a second, it was like, man, is Delija going to adjust? Like, it doesn't seem like it's working. And then squashed that. Dropped Scheffel with a beautiful combo, pounced, and got him out of there. So big statement for him. Another guy who had a great season, so capped it off well. The random fight that was thrown onto the main card, Aspen Ladd and Julia Budd. This was interesting because Ladd, in round 1, she caught a kick from Julia Budd. She won by split decision, I should say. I forgot to give you the result. But she caught a kick from Julia Budd, got a takedown off it, and looked like her old aggressive self. Like, it was like, wow, there's Aspen Ladd. Like, I recognize you. And she was doing really well on the ground. And then round 2 and 3, she couldn't get a takedown. And you realize that her catching that kick was the only reason it ever ended up there, because she couldn't do it on her own, and Bud stopped throwing kicks. And it kind of just became this grueling clinch battle that I honestly thought Ladd was losing. Like, she couldn't get a takedown. Bud, I thought, was having more success in the clinch, more success with the strikes. You know, it was close. I'd like to rewatch it again, but PFL is preventing me from doing that because apparently even if you buy a pay-per-view, you can't rewatch it in PFL, which is ridiculous. So I didn't get to rewatch it. I did think Bud won live, but Ladd gets the nod, so at least she gets off the snide. Good for her. And then a couple more quick. One last title fight was at welterweight, where Sadibou C got a unanimous decision over Dilano Taylor. The reason I kind of saved this one is because it wasn't the most exciting fight you've ever seen. Sadibou C basically won $1 million literally by playing defense. Like, he just maintained range. He kept Taylor on the outside. He pretty much struck only defensively if Taylor tried to come in just to keep him off him. Circled out, used his footwork, and he just stopped Taylor from really accomplishing anything. So kind of wild to see a fighter win a huge fight that way, just fighting purely defensively, but it's a very Sadibou C thing to do. It's not the first time he's done it, and it seems to be working for him, so he gets himself $1 million. And then our boy, Marlon Moraes, who we had some hopes for, took a round 3 TKO loss to Sheyman Moraes, which was tough because Marlon came out looking like the better fighter all fight long. Like, he was better in the striking, better in the wrestling, faster, pressuring. He closed Sheyman's eye almost by the end of round 1. Round 2 was more of the same. Like, he was cruising. Like, it was kind of like, this is awesome. Marlon Moraes is still here. And then it happened again. He was still winning the exchanges in round 3, and then, boom, overhand right on the temple from Sheyman. Marlon tried to survive the barrage, but he just couldn't. So my guess is he won't be one and done in the PFL. I bet we're going to see him again, but to get himself all jacked up out of retirement to come back and fight again and tell himself, like, PFL is where it's at, he's going to reinvigorate himself, and then have that happen, that's a tough pill to swallow. So I don't know where Marlon Moraes' mental is going to be.
Do you think it's even worse that he was beating the shit out of Sheyman Moraes and still gets caught again?
Yeah.
Again. Like, all of this work he puts in for 3 rounds and 1 shot, and he just loses again. Like, that shit's got to be just infuriating. Absolutely
As
infuriating.
the shot came, commentary was like, yeah, man, Sheyman Moraes hasn't found a way to touch Marlon all fight long. Boom. Like, literally, he was handling every bit of the fight.
Dude, I was listening to our show last week with Francesco. We were in the car, and this was already after actually the PFL had gone down, and I was listening to how I was saying that Moraes right now is kind of like that kid who's doing everything right, running, doing everything right, and literally just trips and falls right at the very last second, right before the finish line, and just fucks up. And it's so sad that that's what happened.
Because every loss he has, you leave it still being like, fuck, he was so good though. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
He's talented,
Yeah.
man.
it's weird. It's a weird one. I don't know. So we'll see what he
Poor
does.
dude,
Big win
man.
for Sheyman, obviously, gets his revenge. And then 2 last quick ones just because they were noteworthy. Natan Schulte taps out Jeremy Stevens in 2 rounds. I would say Schulte was winning every single second of this fight. He literally just went right for the takedown. All of round 1 was Stevens surviving sub-attempts. Round 2, we went right back to the ground. Schulte moves to mount, beautiful arm triangle, and that's it. So Jeremy Stevens not having a lot of fun as of late. And then the last one was Magomedkerimov with a UD over Gleison Tibau. Props to Gleison. The man did not get taken down one single time, which is pretty damn impressive. And we know this about Gleison. I shouldn't be surprised. The guy's impossible to take down, but Maga is still good enough that he was able to beat Gleison just simply with the striking. He was ahead all fight long, used the reach. So he gets a nice W. And that is it for what was a pretty deep PFL card.
Give him some.
I'm just here to remind everybody that Gleison Tibau took down Khabib.
Yes. Yes. Arguably the only guy to beat Khabib. A lot of people thought he beat Khabib.
Yeah, Khabib couldn't take him down once, and he got taken down by Gleison. So
That's right.
just here to remind everyone of that real quick.
Also, real quick, going back to Jeremy Stevens. Jeremy Stevens seems like a guy who, and I can't believe I'm saying this, he seems like the kind of guy who would enjoy getting out of MMA and going to like bare knuckle or something like that.
I swear to God, when I saw him tap, in my head, I was like, Jeremy Stevens is not going to do this anymore. He's going to go somewhere where he doesn't have to grapple. And I thought of bare knuckle.
Yeah.
I said from the start when he first left the UFC, I said bare knuckle. He has to go to bare knuckle. It's Jeremy Stevens. Why would you not go to bare knuckle?
Why would not?
PFL makes some sense though, because if Jeremy Stevens believes in himself and he really thinks he has the opportunity to win $1 million, I see it. But maybe now that reality agreed, but not in everything. And so now that he's been choked out by reality, perhaps BKFC is more of a closer thing in the horizon for him.
I'm sure.
I know. I would love it.
I don't know. I don't know if bare knuckle, BKFC to be exact. I don't know if they disclose their payouts like PFL does, but I'm sure they'll pay him. I'm sure they'll pay him. He's a big name.
I know Mike Perry. Mike Perry's making a fucking bag and a half every time he steps onto this cage. So that boy is
Jeremy
whatever
Stevens
it is.
might break a dude's skull in bare knuckle.
Jeremy Stevens is like
hard.
He is the smaller and Midwest version of Mike Perry. Right? If Mike Perry grew up in the Midwest and was 20 pounds lighter, that's Jeremy Stevens.
Isn't Mike Perry from the Midwest originally?
No, he's from Florida.
No,
he's a Florida guy.
Mike Perry's from Miami, bro.
I know he lives in Miami, but I thought he was born somewhere in the Midwest. I'm wrong on that?
Maybe.
He was born. That's why he likes to say a lot of the things he says, because he grew up around a lot of black people.
It's true.
So he takes a lot of liberties, and no one can really check him because he can beat the shit out of everybody.
Born in Michigan. Suck my blank. People.
Is that the Midwest?
He's from the fucking Midwest.
What city? I bet you he moved to Florida a while ago, though.
For much of his life, he moved around to different schools between Michigan and Florida.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can say he's from both, I guess. So we were both right. All right, we were both right.
Told you he's a Midwest man.
Mike Perry.
But, like,
I'm happy
is
for
he,
him in a
though?
way. I'm happy for him in a way. Now that he's found bare knuckle.
Yeah.
What a trajectory that guy's had.
Yes, for sure.
Remember when he was dating his trainer or married to his trainer?
Oh, that was a rough sequence.
It was.
Rough
And then
time
she
period.
tried to
Yeah,
come out. She tried to come out with like abuse.
He had a
And,
kid
like-
with her.
Oh, he
Did
did.
he? Isn't that who his kid is?
No. He only had a kid with this new girl, this Latoria girl. That's his
the
first kid.
the tiny girl
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm confusing myself. Yeah.
who seems very
No, the other
youthful.
one.
Right.
Yeah, the other one was like the older white woman.
Yes.
He
Yes.
found himself a Latina.
He did, and she looks very young. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah. Everyone thinks it. Everyone thinks it.
Okay, enough of this. Jeremy Stevens, go make money boxing or something like that.
Please. No, what?
let's
Don't
move
do
on.
all that. BKFC specifically. You don't need to send him into the death pins of actual boxing. BKFC. Go wreck somebody there.